Hi, this is Stephen Rothberg. I'm the president and founder of College Recruiter. We believe that every student and recent graduate deserves a great career. And for us, a student and recent graduate is definitely not necessarily somebody who's 17, 18, 19, 22 years of age. About a third of college and university students in the US are non-traditional. A lot of them are 30, 40, 50, 60 years of age. About 5%, roughly a million, are military veterans. A million of the 20 million students who are currently enrolled are military veterans, and their age definitely tends to skew up. One of my good friends, Joe Weech, told me a while back about some of the issues that she's been having as a 40-plus-year-old in the job market, talking to HR experts, talent acquisition leaders, et cetera. And she gave me a heads up a while back that she was planning on writing an article and she was going to publish it to LinkedIn. And lo and behold, I saw it yesterday, as did, I think, probably 12, maybe 13% of the world's population. So Joe's had literally thousands and thousands of people read the article. I think something like 2,500 plus likes as of now. It's probably going to end up in the 5 digits. Hundreds of comments, I think 500, 600, and hundreds of shares where people are sharing it with their network. That article just went live yesterday, so who knows what's going to happen to it over the next few days. So Joe was kind enough to almost at the last minute, literally just a few hours ago, agree to jump on this Google Hangout or YouTube video chat with me to talk about some of her experiences, where the article came from, and some of the lessons, not just for the job seekers who might be watching, but also for those in talent acquisition. So I just want to tell people a little bit more about who Joe is. She's a seasoned HR and talent acquisition professional. She's had a hockey stick career, which is near and dear to my heart because I'm a former Canadian, still am actually, due to her love of the profession. She's taken a deep dive into things like talent acquisition, employee engagement, retention, and she speaks a lot at conferences, helping HR personnel, recruiters hone their craft. Her company is called Exemplary Consultants, and what they do is help companies disrupt HR and talent acquisition. And Exemplary Consultants and Joe, of course, are really committed. I think you'll be blown away if you don't yet have the privilege of knowing her, at seeing how committed she is to making work better for everyone. And that's definitely not just the job seeker or the candidate, but also the employer. She's very much a win-win kind of person. So Joe, welcome.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's an honor to be able to talk with you about this subject that I have become quite passionate about. Almost 100% of my volunteer hours has been spent on helping job seekers, whether it's military in transition, I speak at job fairs, but mostly I've been speaking to people who are in the age demographic of the over 40 crowd, and they are having horrific times just being able to be viable for positions that they could really, wrap circles around. And so when I actually ended up being on the other side of the table just as often as I was on my side for the past year, it has been a real eye-opener, and I have been shocked, if not dismayed, at the many positions that people have taken, not just within company culture, but recruiters everywhere. And this has been not just apparently my experience, because I have gotten literally hundreds of people contacting me from all over the world, every continent except for Antarctica at the moment. And it's been very sad. So I believe this is a global issue, not just commensurate with our experience here in the United States. And so it doesn't make it any better. It just makes it worse. My hope with the article was not to do the BMW thing, the bitch moan whine thing about the situation, but to really call attention, and not to call out companies in specific, but to call attention to the fact that Derek Zeller wrote an article about diversity panels and said, we have really made some headway with race, with gender identification, mobility issues. no matter what it is, it seems that we're getting the ability to raise the bar when it comes to every single EEOC protected class except for age. For whatever reason, nobody seems to know that it's not legal to discriminate against a person because they are over the age of 40. And here's the thing, it's not only illegal, but it's actually something that's being practiced just widely and wildly in a way that I believe it's time to just say, stop. We should not be discriminating against anyone. Diversity and inclusion means every protected class, every person, not just specific ones. And so this is why I believe that this is really a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And so this is why I wrote the article.
Yeah, and it was the article had some anecdotes in there that were, if I had more hair curling, and for as you can sort of see with the gray and the beard and the hairline, I'm in the same group as you are. I'm in that over 40 group. I know you thought I was 19. I know it, and thank you. For a 19-year-old, I've aged pretty poorly, but
you've worked in talent acquisition, is what you.
Yeah. Wow, I could go on with that one for a while, but some of the stories of talking to recruiters who just out and out directly said to you, basically, sorry, you're too old. I mean, not even kind of, some of them disguising it in code language.
Right.
I've heard sometimes recruiters, HR managers, VPs of talent acquisition, they'll use like euphemisms like, we want somebody who's got energy. Recent college grad is a requirement that in our world, it definitely seems to me, and at times it's a way of discriminating against older people. Sometimes there's a real reason for that. Often I think it's because employers just think if they hire a recent college grad, they can get away with age discrimination. And yet you hear stories from college career service offices of a highly, highly qualified recent grads who are 47 years old or whatever, walking to an interview room and just out blatantly being discriminated against. And other times, some organizations, fortunately, don't. You had told me earlier that you've been receiving stories from people everywhere from Macedonia to Australia, with the exception of Antarctica. So we got to get those researchers writing into you. What have been some of the experiences that these folks have been finding?
Well, it's been a very, very sad time. I've spent pretty much, other than sleeping a few hours, the last 24 hours actually engaging with everybody who has sent me a note, which I know it sounds a little insane, but I really have been just taken in by their stories. People who are told, oh, well, you know what, you have way more experience, you're going to be bored in this role. It's just all, double speak for you're way too old for this position. And people are like, please bore me to death. I want to be bored. Please give me an opportunity to be bored. And one person who said that he went into a hiring manager and the person just simply said, oh, you're old, got up, ushered him out of the office and threw his resume in the trash. And I'm thinking, it's like we hear these stories and we think they can't possibly be true, but apparently it's true everywhere. And so this is a problem, and I'm glad we have an association of talent acquisition professionals to be able to help start addressing this sort of thing. But at the end of the day, one person said it's only going to be changed if people start filing lawsuits, and where it's going to actually cost people money to discriminate against people who are more seasoned in their experience with life or with their profession. And it's really, that to me was a very sad thing to think about, that we can't possibly change things by discussing them, that we can't just possibly bring education to these companies, that it would have to be resorted to. If it hits them in the pocketbook, then they'll do something about it. And so that's where I would like to say, we're better than that. We can completely change this up without having to go that route.
Yeah, and decades ago, I'm not condoning it, but at least I could kind of understand it. When employment was thought of as lifetime, you'd be with that employer for 40 years. if somebody had 10 years left in their likely career, I could kind of understand an employer preferring a younger candidate because that person would be with them for 40 rather than 10 years. But no one works for the same company for their entire career anymore. And I'll tell you that the employees that we've hired that have been the most productive, they all have experience. A younger and or less experienced candidate tends not to be nearly as productive as an older candidate with more experience. And so even though that older candidate might require a higher compensation rate, not always. The life expectations change. My wife and I just became empty nesters, and we downsized. Our cost of living is a lot less. There are a whole lot of expenses that we just simply don't have anymore. So do we need as much income as we did 3 years ago? No. And I think that there are a lot of older workers who are in that boat. They've been, busting their butts for 20 years, and it's great, and they've accomplished what they want to accomplish, and they want to take a step back. Some of them just that is to get into another high stress, high hour position. It's going to be stressful to them. It's actually going to create more problems, and a more entry level type of position might be more in line. Also, how many people out there? It's like, I've done this for 20 years. I want to do something else. And they get into an area that they don't have that much expertise in, and it's a kind of an entry level opportunity for some of them, or lower level of experience, and they've got all the experience that they can port over or transfer over from that other position, but they need to start off at a position that requires less experience, but they're going to be all in. What are some ideas that you have for companies that might be able to change up? I know sometimes people will call it, accepted form of discrimination, like you were sort of alluding to earlier. I don't think any one of us should accept it, but I get what you mean by that. But what are some things that companies can do, like some concrete steps that they can take to get rid of this from their environments?
The first thing I would like to do is I would like to eradicate the myth that the more seasoned, experienced workers are more expensive. When you look at the fact that we know more and have done it for as long as we have, we can do it in less time with greater efficacy and efficiency. I had a company that hired me to accomplish a task, and they budgeted for 40 hours. I got it done in 9 hours, and they were just scratching their heads like, how did you manage to do that? I said, because I know what I'm doing. I have 10 years of experience doing this, and so I have learned how to hone my work so that I didn't have to figure things out as I was going along. I actually knew what I had to do before I walked in to do it, and I only charged him for those hours. It's like, I know you budgeted for this, but I'm not charging you because it didn't take me that long. And one position that I was in, I circled back with the person who would probably be considered Gen Xer now, and I asked them a few years later, so how are things going there? They're like, Joe, the principals are still scratching their heads. They do not know how you got things done because they've hired 2.5 people to replace you, and they're still not getting done the volume of work that you got done. How did you do it? And it made me laugh. But so I think that people need to say, we might be spending more for this experienced person, but in the end, we're saving money because this person is going to not only just be able to do it, in a more expert way and with greater efficiency, but will be able to train and mentor the other people so that they can come up to that level as well. And so I think that people are not looking at this in the right way. Companies are just looking at dollar amounts. So you've got CFO making a decision about what to compensate for a particular role without taking into consideration attrition. For example, you get somebody, under the age of 40 who is really a rock star on their way, they're not going to stay there because they're going to be courted from the day they start at your company. They'll be courted by other companies. So people in the over 40 range tend to be a little bit more loyal. We kind of grew up with different values, especially how we see work, and we have a productivity and a longevity in a role. that will save the company money over time. So I think that that's number one that needs to be changed up. And then number two, the companies that when you look at their company photos, it's like, I'm all for the fact that there are 102 people in the company. And I'm not joking about this, not just me, but several other people have said the same thing. The group photos show that there's not anybody really, unless, somebody has really done a good dye job and gotten Botox, that they're really not over the age of 40. And if there are, there may only be 1 or 2 people out of 100 people. And that's just as bad as having, so being a token older person, as bad as having your token name, fill in the blank. Back in the day, the token black, the token woman, the token, it's always a token person. And so I don't believe that our demographic should be treated as the token interview, which apparently is happening across the board. These younger companies are having to at least say, oh, well, we interviewed that person, but they were not a cultural fit. That word cultural fit needs to just be torpedoed, because that's just simply a word for, we are going to discriminate against anybody that doesn't look like us, think like us, and that's what we're going to use for rejection. And I think it's completely unacceptable.
Yeah, and all the data shows that the more diverse a workforce, the more productive is that workforce. So that whole cultural fit it's another way of saying we really want to have an unproductive workforce. I get it that you don't want to bring in somebody who is just going to be getting into arguments and that and destroy your productivity. But somebody who they can only get work done between midnight and 8 a.m. and you run a retail clothing shop. Well, guess what? But that's not a cultural fit. As that somebody along this, but if you've got if you've got a stereotypical workforce where it's all male, all former fraternity people, you've got a major problem on your hands. You're not going to be able to bring in other points of view. And those of us who are older, you could call it experience. Another word for that is wisdom. We've been there before. We've seen these things before. I've seen ups and downs in the job market with employees coming, or the labor market being hot, the labor market being cold, and seeing cycles. And it's amazing how when you're looking at, say startup businesses, it's like, yeah, I've seen 12 of those before. Each one of them sounded great when they got $12 million in funding, and each one of them flamed out. In a few months, you'll flame out too. And I think in the recruiting world, that wisdom of being able to understand what has come before, what you've seen before, it's so hard to teach somebody who just doesn't have that experience. For people over 40, if they're trying to enter the workforce, perhaps they were a stay-at-home parent, or they're trying to change careers. What advice do you have for them?
Well, that's an excellent question. So what I tell people is that if they have no job experience within the last 10 years or 20 years or however long it's been, it's really great to volunteer what you do to an organization who could really benefit from your volunteering. If you can, you're a bookkeeper, you can do books. Volunteer for a nonprofit in your neighborhood, and offer to do their books. So get engaged in volunteering your services and your time so that you can have something, that can say, hey, I'm not just relevant from 20 years ago, I'm actually relevant now. I can do this now. I think that would be very helpful. I also think that networking, when you say that 72% of all jobs industry-wide are filled by networking and referral, you should be networking with people. When you are volunteering at these various places, whether it's a pet shelter or homelessness, it doesn't matter where you volunteer, you're going to be volunteering with people, that you can make friends with. And the point is not to make friends so they can get you a job. The point is to learn from people who are in the current workforce, who may be in your industry, to get up-to-date information on how things are working in the industry now, how much has changed. And so it's really for intel gathering and to really edify yourself so that you can become more relevant. I also think I want to address something that you said about people who go in and they're just going to destroy things. Well, there's one person who had a very tragical story to tell. And I wrote back to him and I said, I really feel your pain. You know, I really understand that that was a horrible thing to go through, but please don't share that story when you're on your next interview. That unfortunately, and I'm seeing actually in my comments on the threads, you know, for this article, that there are people who are really, in a way, that they are justifiably bitter because they have been discriminated against, and there is a victimization, if you will. You know, when you go through that, there are a lot of emotions. But this is where you need to rise to your call as a seasoned life person, and that's to do this with dignity. Don't complain. Don't go in acting like you know better than everybody there. You know, chances are we do know more than everybody there collectively as far as what we have expertise in. But that's not how you go into any organization. I don't care if you're 20, 50, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's who are you as a professional? Can you have humility to say, I can learn from someone who's only been doing this for 10 minutes? Because if you can do that, then you will be viable. You will be able to be collaborative, and that's the most important thing you need to bring to the table is collaboration, cooperation, respect for your coworkers, whether they're, you know, treating you in a way that you find to be demeaning. I just feel like, okay, we need to get over ourselves. We do not get to command respect. Respect comes from being respectable. We could go into a whole rabbit hole on that one, but seriously, I think that it's really important to not treat others the way you have been treated. I was quoted by Chip Cutter in a LinkedIn article recently about someone who had ghosted me, and there were like 4,000 comments of people who are like, karma's a bitch. You know, they feel like recruiters have been ghosting candidates, so therefore, you know, you're just getting your comeuppance. But I would say you don't return evil for evil, but good instead. I would say don't treat people the way you would not want to be treated. Yes, it's happened to you. That doesn't give you the platform to react back in the same way. So I would say be the better person, you know, be the better individual, and make sure that you are walking with humility and gentleness and eagerness to learn about how things are being done. I also have one more thing I would like to say to this age demographic. Remember when I said that in the article that I had reviewed resumes for people in the 50 plus group? It was a career fair just for these folks. There are hundreds of people lined up to come in to get their resumes reviewed. And it broke my heart. And it wasn't just the people with the Juno and Earthlink and AOL account, you know, things, but the fact that these people had not kept up with technology. They had not kept up with anything. They were not using social media. And so they almost are responsible for their own irrelevance, if you will. So I would say that if you are in that category and you have avoided all of these things because, first of all, you're fearful of it, get somebody in your neighborhood, pay them, you know, per hour, give them gift cards to teach you how to use things. Take courses online. I can't even begin to talk about the plethora of courses. I'm actually enrolled in college courses online now, so I'm in your demographic of those people, you know, who are in my age category, but, you know, still continuing to try to become more educated. And I would say, don't wait. Don't say it's too late. You can just start tomorrow morning and just say, okay, today's the day that I am going to enter into this, you know, era. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that we will hear, of course, from some candidates is, well, I don't have money to go to school, and you know, I need to work, and so I can't volunteer. And it's not that we're advising them to do this and only this. You know, it's not that you have to go to school and only go to school. You can go to school in a very low cost or even free way. The YouTube is probably the world's biggest school. So if you ever want to figure out how to do something, just go over to YouTube and type it in. And there are probably like 48 geeks who have posted an article on exactly that, no matter what it is. Some of them are there to make money because they've got millions of subscribers, but mostly it's just people basically volunteering. They're trying to help their neighbor. They think this is really interesting, how to change a blade on a lawnmower or whatever it might be. So YouTube is a phenomenal resource to learn how to write a resume, even, convert a Word document to a PDF. If a company says, can you email your resume to me as a PDF? A lot of people have no clue how to do that. You go to YouTube, in 5 minutes, you're going to know how to do that. And surprise, surprise, it doesn't cost anything. The volunteering experience advice that you had, Joe, I thought was really interesting, because that's one of the things that we say to college students as they're graduating. We'll hear from college students, it's like, well, I don't have any experience. Employers won't hire me because I don't have experience. How do I get experience if I haven't had a job? And they think it's unfair. And to an extent it is. But just like you said, if you're looking for a job as an accountant, go and volunteer your time to a nonprofit and do their tax returns, balance their checkbook once a month, find a neighbor or a friend who has a small business and help them out by being a cashier for 3 hours a week. Now you've got retail experience. It doesn't mean that you have to volunteer 40 hours a week and not be able to pay your rent.
Right.
If you're paying your rent by being an Uber driver, take a few hours out a week and volunteer your time at the shelter, some other nonprofit, at a government agency. Go down to your local library, your city hall, or whatever. And there are a plethora of opportunities to help out other people. Another thing I would add to what you said about networking within those nonprofit opportunities is the heads of the committees and the boards of directors or advisors or whatever that nonprofit might call it. They're almost always people who are leaders in the community. They might be business owners, they might be politicians, and those people, almost by definition, are incredibly well connected. So if you're serving on a committee or you're working for even in a volunteer capacity at a nonprofit, it's inevitable that you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with people who know 10, 20, 30 hiring managers, business owners, whatever, who are looking for people exactly like you. Networking is about trying to find ways of helping other people and offering your help to them. Karma can be a bitch, but karma can also be a really wonderful thing. When you find ways to helping other people, it tends to come back to you. Maybe not that person, but
Right.
that person's cousin or something along those lines.
Right. It's be a friend, do good. That's like Christopher Kurtz, our friend, who says, do good, be kind. You cannot go wrong with practicing that every single day and with every interaction.
Unless you're at a four-way stop and you're always the person who's waving someone else. That is inexcusable. Yeah. You can't do that.
Yeah, that person on the right never knows it's them, right?
Just go. Anyway, well, I really appreciate the time. Fantastic discussion. So if for those of you watching the video who have not yet read the article, go over to LinkedIn, and Jo spells her name J-O and a W-E-E-C-H. She is going to be very easy to find because of her unusual name. Her name, it's not like it's Heather Smith, or something along those lines. And you'll see she's written some other articles that also might be of great help. But this one about over 40, I think it will really knock your socks off in terms of like how candid it is without being negative, without outing specific employers and without shaming anybody. It's like we need to work together to solve this problem. And I just love the way you wrote the article. Again, Joe, if you just kind of want to tell people a little bit about you, how they might be able to contact you, and then I'll do a 2-second wrap up.
Okay, well, yep. As Steve said, I'm the only Joe Weech, and that's not J-O-E. It's Joe, J-O, Weech. Out of 500 million profiles, I'm the only one, so it'll be very easy to find me. Please connect with me, and I do my best to respond to everybody who contacts me, and I just want to say that I also have a very special place in my heart for people who are transitioning military. I volunteer a lot of time in the SFL TAP programs, to help people who are in transition. I think you have more of a unique challenge than really all the rest of us And so I'm happy to have you connect with me, because I've actually written an article, to help veterans, and I've also written an article to help recruiters recruit veterans. So if you're a recruiter and you're listening in, please go there and, contact me if you have any questions about how to actually, respectfully engage people who have served in the military. So those are all areas that I'm happy to help with. Exemplary Consultants was founded because someone said, Joe, you keep giving out free advice. We need to pay you for it. And so I really love to be able to help startups and nonprofits and just small companies be able to disrupt HR. And I have just appreciated how Laszlo Bock is doing this. He pretty much did this for Google, made it the most important company and the most sought after company to work at. And now he's trying to, with Humu, do this. So I do believe that people like that inspire me, that we can do better. We can really make work better for every person on the planet. And I really believe that with all my heart, or I would not be involved in this process.
And Exemplary Consultants is, what's the web page address for it, the URL?
ExemplaryConsultants.com. I love when life is simple. Simple is better, right?
That's a good domain. That's pretty easy. No nasty hyphens or .infos or whatever. Well, just to wrap up, again, this is Stephen Rothberg. I'm the president and founder of College Recruiter. We're a job search site for students and recent grads who are looking for part-time, seasonal, internship, and entry-level jobs. You can find us online at www.collegerecruiter.com. Anybody has any questions, concerns, they want to reach out to me directly, feel free to email me, Steven, S-T-E-V-E-N, at collegerecruiter.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm not the only Stephen Rothberg on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Stephen with a V, Rothberg. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.